What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk to you about Lucid. Absolutely kick-ass day. I want to go over some of the data points, break it down what really moved it, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So Lucid went up 8.66%, closing at 251. Amazing day. 232 the low, 253 the high. And so today Lucid did stand out because it was kind of back and forth, kind of the market. So some positives, some negatives. I think now everyone's just holding in their breath for negotiations between China and the States. So that should be commencing Saturday. But you did have 160.96 million in volume today. 109.48 is the average. No official news from Lucid, as you can kind of see. So no official news today, no SEC filings, no new analyst ratings. So it's basically the same four. So you did have Needham, Stifel, Bank of America, and TD Cowen all given ratings. Most likely more will be coming down the pipeline, but there was a couple of things that did come out at least over the last 24-ish hours that is worthwhile to bring up. So latest Flyover. So you can kind of see it did increase from roughly 70 for the most part to 180 gravities. So they are really ramping up, and that's kind of what they signaled during the recent earnings. They kind of downplayed it a little bit, but still 180 is pretty good. They do need to do that a little bit faster, but nonetheless a fairly good increase. So let me know your viewpoint on that. So I feel like this did help at least the sentiment a little bit. I don't know if institutions would be buying based on this right here, but nonetheless I think it's good for the broader sentiment. One thing that did come out though roughly 24 hours ago, or at least early this morning, was from Bazinga. So it looks as though that Lucid is offering over $20,000 in discounts on Air sedans, and that's during obviously to combat against the tariffs and so forth. So when it comes down to it, it looks like the touring trims, Air touring trims, are at a 25 for a discount. So you can kind of see that right there. That does include the 7,500 federal EV credit, also 1,000 on-site bonus and whatever else. It looks like up to 18,000 for Grand Touring and Pure. So yeah, pretty good stuff, I think, all in all. So this is in my opinion the only thing that has really come out to justify potentially Lucid really moving higher. And so this would, in theory, you would assume, really get rid of their kind of excess inventory, because from their last earnings, inventory did really go up. So clearly they've been really ramping up, and maybe not a lot in sales. I'm not really sure ultimately, but I think this is kind of a good thing to play devil's advocate. As I've signaled in the past, when there is, it's kind of a weird scenario. So just generally, not even aside from Lucid, any product out there, you never really have to give discounts if there is sufficient demand. But I think with the whole tariffs, that is putting a wrench in everything. That's really screwing a lot of things up. Even Ford failed to give future guidance. A lot of companies are failing to give future guidance because of just the grayness associated to tariffs. So I've already seen some bears saying that this is negative to really signal that lack of demand. I think it's too early to jump to that conclusion. Aside, like if there was no tariffs and they did this, then I would agree that this is a very negative thing. But with the tariffs, I think every company out there is going to be fighting still for that business, for the consumers that are out there willing to buy a vehicle. But we just need tariffs to subside, and hopefully, based on, again, what Trump has been stating, there is going to be more coming down the pipeline. So hopefully Canada and the Chinese ones do get knocked down. It is estimated, I think it's like 80% for the Chinese ones. Most likely needs to really go down to like 40 or 30, in my opinion, in order for the market to really continue to expand at the same rate it kind of was. But long story short, this is, in my opinion, what really caused it to go higher today. Aside from that, shorts did increase 1.61 million shares today. So they did not believe in kind of the green day today, but 29.32% of the free float is being shorted. Works out to be 361.17 million shares. The shorts are still kind of hell-bent on really trying to bring Lucid down. Based on the options, you did have 1.51 million in calls, 463,000 in puts. 53% of all the options being done today were bearish in nature. So a little bit kind of doesn't match with what happened on the stock price though, on the common stock. But based on this, with today being Friday, you had 27,000 at that 250 and then 26,000 at that $3 strike price. So with Lucid closing at that 251, that does mean that the 250 and below strike prices are in the money. So that's roughly around 2.9 million shares that does need to be covered by market makers. So you might see some abnormal activity after hours today and possibly even tomorrow. Right now you are seeing some transactions. There was a big one right here, so 5.5 million, so 2.2 million shares. So that obviously was market makers already covering some, but like I said, based on this, is roughly around 2.9 million. So you might see some buying possibly for the rest of for after hours today, or maybe rolling it over into Monday. So something just to keep in mind. But aside from that, of the volume, you do see a consensus for it to be above 250/3 going into next week. And then the bears are anticipating for it to be roughly around that $2 range. Stay tuned for my video for coming up this weekend. I'll go over some expectations and everything that you need to know. But with it closing at 251, trading smack dab in the middle between this R1 and the pivot. So 241 is going to be a strong support, and then 264 is going to be the next strong target / resistance. So things definitely were very surprising with Lucid. So hats off to them, and hats off to anyone that did recently buy the dip, or the earnings dip if you want to call it that. But today also was able to push it back into kind of between this range of that 100 and also 50-day moving average. So 50-day moving average is 235, 264 is that 100. So kind of just trading wedge bound between those 2 points. So pretty good stuff as far as that. So let me know your thoughts on Lucid. Did you buy? Did you sell? What's your viewpoint on as far as this? I know already a lot of people in the comments might be somewhat divided. Some people might see this as extremely optimistic, really incentivizing sales. Others might be relatively bearish on it. So what's your kind of 2 cents on that? And when it comes down to the Gravity ramping up, do you think that this is sufficient? What would you feel is good for on a weekly basis, right? Because one thing that they did state in their last earnings was that they're anticipating pretty much the same level of demand with the Air as pretty much 2024. So it is fair to assume that we're going to have roughly around, let's say rounding up, 11,000 for 2025 for Airs. So that does mean that Lucid, the Gravity, does need to make up that 9,000 in order for them to hit their target. So they really need to put the pedal to the metal, get their ass in gear, and really start ramping up. But do you think this is sufficient for right now, or what's your viewpoint on all that? Hopefully everyone has a good weekend. Happy Mother's Day to everyone out there that celebrates and whatever. But one final thing, pop over to my Patreon and get buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. So worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.